The room went so quiet I could hear the ice shifting in my father's glass. My sister-in-law let out a sharp, mocking laugh and said that since I had no family of my own, babysitting was basically my training. That was the second something inside me stopped bending. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I grabbed my purse, walked past every stunned face, and left. To understand why that moment broke something open in me, you have to understand how my family treated my life like spare storage. My brother Austin and his wife K.H. Lowe already had 4 kids, 8-year-old Maya, 6-year-old Mason, 4-year-old Nora, and toddler Leo. I loved those children fiercely, and that love was exactly what my family weaponized against me. Whenever Maya had a fever during my final exams, I was called selfish for not leaving work. When Mason's preschool closed, Austin dropped him at my apartment and said I was better with schedules. When Nora was born, my mother announced to the whole family that I had volunteered to help, which somehow meant 3 weekends of laundry and bedtime routines while Austin played golf. Because new fathers needed breaks. Every time I pushed back, they acted wounded. Every time I gave in, they called it love. So when Austin announced baby number 5 at the family cookout, my body reacted before my brain could stop it. That baby wasn't just being celebrated, it was another anchor to chain me to a role I never chose. By the time I hit the main road, my phone was already buzzing. My mother texted asking me not to embarrass the family. Austin claimed I'd made K.H. Lowe cry. I ignored all of it. The next morning, I met my closest friend Julian at a coffee shop. He was the only person in my life who never treated my boundaries like an attack. I laid out the whole night, the announcement, K.H. Lowe's comment about my empty life. Julian listened, then said quietly that what they were doing wasn't asking for help anymore. It was asserting ownership. I wanted to argue. I knew he was right. My phone lit up again, my mother ordering me to come to the house so they could fix my attitude. Julian warned me not to go. People like them, he said, don't want a conversation, they want surrender. But some foolish part of me still believed that if I spoke calmly, showed them I was a person and not a backup plan, they might finally hear me. When I walked into my parents' house, my mother was stirring iced tea like she was hosting a luncheon instead of an intervention. Austin sat scrolling his phone. K.H. Lowe leaned against the counter, eyes suspiciously red. My father stood by the sliding door, silent as always. Mom said they weren't asking for much. I told her she hadn't asked at all, she'd commanded. Austin snapped that nobody expected me to raise the kids forever. K.H. Lowe chimed in that it would only be until they got through the pregnancy and the first year. I said a year of raising 4 children wasn't a small favor, it was a lifetime. My mother sighed like I was being difficult and pointed out that I worked from home, rented an apartment, had no husband, no kids of my own. What exactly was I protecting so fiercely? That sentence hit harder than any scream could have, because my life didn't look like theirs, it simply counted less. I told her quietly that I was protecting myself. Austin scoffed, protecting myself from my own family. Was I paranoid now? Then my phone rang, an unknown number. Officer Daniels from the Oak Ridge Community Center asking if I knew that 3 young children had just been dropped off there under my name. I looked straight at Austin. His mouth went thin. The officer read me the note that had been left with them. I agreed to supervise Maya, Mason, and Nora for the day. But staff became concerned when no adult properly checked them in. K.H. Lowe looked away. My mother reached for the counter to steady herself. Austin muttered it wasn't a big deal. That was the exact moment I understood they hadn't just assumed I'd obey. They had engineered a trap where refusing would make me look heartless. I left without another word. I told Officer Daniels I was on my way and that I wanted it officially documented that I had never consented to take custody of those children. He said he understood and told me to drive safely. Austin followed me to the driveway, warning me not to make it official. I reminded him he made it official the moment he abandoned his own kids with strangers. At the center, a receptionist pointed me down a hallway of handprints to the activity room. Maya sat with her arms wrapped around herself. Mason stared blankly at a puzzle. Nora clutched a worn, stuffed rabbit. Leo wasn't there. K.H. had decided he was too young for their scheme. When Maya saw me, her face crumpled in relief. I knelt beside her but refused to promise everything was fine because children deserve the truth. I told her I was there and the grown-ups were going to figure it out. Mason asked in a small, scared voice if they were in trouble. I promised him they weren't. Officer Daniels handed me a plastic sleeve with the note inside. I recognized the handwriting instantly, my mother's. It said I had agreed to watch the kids until further notice, that I was their aunt with no other obligations. Reading that phrase, no other obligations, 3 times made my blood run cold. My own mother had written my worthlessness on paper and handed it to strangers. The officer asked if I'd ever agreed to this verbally or in writing. I said no. He asked for proof. I pulled up the text thread, my refusal, my mother's manipulation, all of it. He explained the center couldn't release the children to me without my consent, especially given the improper drop-off, and that if the parents didn't retrieve them promptly, Child Protective Services would be notified. He made clear I was under no legal obligation to take them just to keep the peace. Maya tugged my sleeve, whispering that her mom said I wanted them today. I told her that I always wanted them safe, but grown-ups weren't allowed to lie about who was responsible for them. Austin arrived first, face flushed with anger, easier to perform than shame. K.H. followed, one hand on her stomach like a shield. My mother arrived last, dressed for church, appearances intact. My father stayed in the parking lot, close enough to watch, far enough to avoid responsibility. In the private conference room, Austin tried to call it a misunderstanding. Officer Daniels held up the sleeve and noted that misunderstandings don't usually involve unattended children and missing check-in forms. K.H. snapped that the kids weren't abandoned because I was supposed to pick them up. I sat up straight and said I had never agreed to any of it. My mother gave me the disappointed look she'd weaponized my whole life, telling me this wasn't the time to be stubborn. It amazed me, 3 children left with strangers, police involved, and somehow my boundaries were still the emergency. The officer turned to my mother and asked who wrote the note. She lifted her chin and admitted she had, because I'd always helped before. He asked again, had I actually agreed to that day? She opened her mouth, closed it, said nothing. Austin jumped in, calling me emotional and difficult. I told him he was the one who created this disaster the moment he dumped his kids with my name on a fake note. My mother softened her voice, called me sweetheart, asked me to understand the pressure Austin and K.H. were under with baby number 5. I told K.H. that if a 5th child was too much pressure, they should have planned better instead of announcing it like a trophy. Austin slammed the table, shouting that I was jealous of his real family. I stayed level and told him I wasn't jealous, I was exhausted from him treating the rest of us like unpaid staff. I asked Officer Daniels to document officially that I was not an emergency contact, caregiver, or guardian for any of my brother's children moving forward. Austin called me heartless. I opened my phone and read their messages aloud in front of the officer, their exact words on record. My mother's face drained as she realized I was building a wall of evidence in real time. The officer finalized the report, warning Austin that another incident like this could trigger an automatic referral to family services. K.H. finally cried for real. My mother whispered that I should be ashamed. I told her I hadn't caused this and I wasn't going to hide it anymore. Austin threatened to tell the whole family I'd abandoned my niece and nephews. I smiled and told him if he tried, I'd send every relative a high-resolution photo of our mother's note. His confidence collapsed. My mother looked at me like I'd turned into a stranger. The old version of me would have folded. That version was gone. After Austin and K.H. signed the release forms, I hugged Maya, Mason, and Nora and told them I loved them. In the parking lot, my father finally stepped out and told me I'd taken things too far. I told him I hadn't taken anything too far, I had simply stopped carrying their chaos in silence. At home, my phone filled with missed calls and a guilt-tripping voicemail asking if I was proud of myself. Instead of answering, I opened my laptop and drafted a formal notice stating I did not consent to being listed as caregiver or emergency contact for Austin and KH Lowe's children. Under any circumstances, attaching the note and the texts and sending it to my entire immediate family. 2 days later, my cousin sent a screenshot from the group chat, Austin claiming I'd abandoned his kids out of jealousy. I didn't argue. I posted one message, the facts, alongside a photo of my mother's signed note inside its police evidence sleeve. The chat went silent for 11 full minutes while decades of manipulation crumbled under the weight of proof. Setting that boundary cost me my parents, my brother, the illusion of family. But it gave me back my freedom and my self-respect. Keeping the peace in a toxic family is just another name for accepting mistreatment. Standing up for yourself feels terrifying at first, but living life on your own terms is worth every piece of fake harmony you leave behind.